Development in Chicago City Hall before becoming the founding executive director of the Chicago chapter of Public Allies, an AmeriCorps program that prepares youth for public service. In '96, she joined the University of Chicago with a vision of bringing campus and community together. As Associate Dean of Student Services, she developed the university's first community service program, and under her leadership as Vice President of Community and External Affairs for the University of Chicago Medical School, volunteerism skyrocketed. She has continued her efforts to support and inspire young people during her tenure as First Lady. In 2010, she launched Let's Move, bringing together community leaders, educators, medical professionals, and others, including parents, in a nationwide effort to address the challenge of childhood obesity. In 2011, she and Dr. Jill Biden came together to launch Joining Forces, a nationwide initiative calling all Americans to rally around service members, veterans, and their families and support them through wellness, education, and employment opportunities. In 2014, Mrs. Obama launched the Reach Higher initiative, an effort to inspire young people across this country to take charge of their future by completing their education past high school, whether at a professional training program, a community college, or a four-year college or university. In 2015, Mrs. Obama joined the president to launch Let Girls Learn, a government-wide initiative to help girls around the world go to school and stay in school. The common thread running through her career and her life is the steadfast belief that education, hard work, and service to one's community and country will improve the lives of individuals and will make our society better and stronger. That is the same belief on which our college and conservatory and this city of Oberlin stand. So please join me in welcoming to our Oberlin community a great inspirational leader, First Lady Michelle Obama. First Lady Michelle Obama, inspiring role model and advocate for poverty awareness, access to higher education, and healthy living, lawyer, civic leader. In the name of Oberlin College, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Humanities with all the rights, privileges, and honors thereunto appertaining. It is now my great privilege and honor to ask the First Lady, Michelle Obama, to address you, class of 2015.
Hi. How are you all doing? Are you sure? Well, let me just tell you, it is beyond a pleasure and an honor to be here with all of you today. I want to start by thanking President Krislov for that very kind introduction, as well as all of the trustees, the faculty, the staff here at Oberlin. I also want to tell you how proud and how moved I am to receive this honorary degree from this particular school, the first college in America to officially embrace the admission of Black students and the first co-ed school to grant bachelor's degrees to women. I should be here today. Oberlin is likely the only college in America that I could have attended nearly 2 centuries ago. And I am honored to be part of the extraordinary legacy of this great institution. I also want to take a moment on this Memorial Day to pay tribute to all of the brave men and women who have sacrificed their lives so that we could sit here today at peace with rights and freedoms that others around the world can only dream of. I'm so proud to honor these American heroes today and every day for their extraordinary service to our nation. And I'm also a little giddy to be joined on stage by another one of my heroes, Marian Wright Edelman. Oh. Her moral leadership on behalf of children in this country has inspired me throughout my career, as well as my husband, the President of the United States. And graduates, I think we should give another shout out to your families, of course, all the families. These are the folks who pushed you and supported you. They answered your late night phone calls, even when you were just calling for money. So on behalf of your students, I just want to show you all some love today as well. Thank you for creating these fabulous individuals. Well done. And finally, most of all, I want to congratulate the Oberlin class of 2015. Look at you. You made it. You're here. You're looking good. And I know you worked hard to make it to this moment, didn't you? Stayed up late writing those papers, studying for exams, spent hours practicing and performing. You went to countless happy hours and happy hours at the FEV. I hear. I'm going to try one of those burgers for lunch today. That's all I'm going to have. Where, of course, parents, that's where they studied some more. And on top of all of that, you spent thousands of hours giving back to this community, tutoring kids, playing music for seniors, serving food to folks in need, and of course, mentoring the local young people back there. I see you all through the 9 Scholars Program. So proud of you all back there. And that's, as the president said, why I'm here today. As he mentioned, my office did this wonderful competition to highlight colleges that are helping underserved young people graduate from high school and then go on to higher education. So by providing tutoring and ACT prep classes, financial aid workshops, and so much more, your 9 Scholars Program stood out as a shining example of how schools like Oberlin can lift first-generation students into college. So I'm here today because I'm proud of you all. I really am. I'm inspired by your commitment to service and social justice. And I'm impressed by the community that you all have created here. A warm, supportive, inclusive community that embodies the values that define this school. And even amidst the joy and excitement of graduation, I know that you may be feeling some real sadness about leaving this community behind. You may also be feeling some real anxiety about venturing out into the world beyond these walls. And I'm not going to lie to you, for many of you, this is going to be a pretty big transition. In fact, I think Dr. Martin Luther King described it well in his commencement address in '65 when he declared, quote, "Today you bid farewell to the safe security of the academic environment. You prepare to continue your journey on the clamorous highways of life," unquote. And the truth is, graduates, after 4 years of thoughtful respectful discussion and debate here at Oberlin, those seminars where you explored new ideas, those late night conversations where you challenged each other and learned from each other, after all of that, you might find yourself a little dismayed by the clamor outside these walls. The name calling, the negative ads, the folks yelling at each other on TV. After being surrounded by people who are so dedicated to serving others and making the world a better place, you might feel a little discouraged by the polarization and gridlock that too often characterize our politics and civic life. And in the face of all that clamor, you might have an overwhelming instinct to just run the other way as fast as you can. You might be tempted to just recreate what you had here at Oberlin, to find a community of like-minded folks and work with them on causes you care about, and just tune out all of the noise. And that's completely understandable. In fact, I sometimes have that instinct myself. Run! But today, graduates, I want to urge you to do just the opposite. Today, I want to suggest that if you truly wish to carry on the Oberlin legacy of service and social justice, then you need to run to and not away from the noise. Today, I want to urge you to actively seek out the most contentious, polarized, gridlock places you can find. Because so often throughout our history, those have been the places where progress really happens. The places where minds are changed, lives transformed, where our great American story unfolds. For example, think back to the struggle for women's suffrage and the story of a leading suffragist and Oberlin alum named Lucy Stone. Yeah, people screamed at her. They spat on her. They even threw prayer books at her as she tried to speak. Her opponents declared that letting women vote was, quote unquote, unnatural, would lead to child neglect and all kinds of social ills. So I'd say that debate was pretty polarized, wouldn't you? And think about President Roosevelt's struggle to pass the New Deal a few decades later. FDR's plan for Social Security was called socialist, a fraud on the working man. One opponent even stated that it would, quote, end the progress of a great country, unquote. So that debate was pretty contentious too. And in the years before Dr. King addressed those Oberlin graduates in '65, he and his colleagues faced fire hoses and dogs in Montgomery, beatings on a bridge in Selma, insults and assaults as they sat quietly at lunch counters and marched peacefully down public streets. And if you think today's gridlock is bad, let me remind you that it was a good century between the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation and the passage of the civil rights legislation of the 1960s. And of all the women at the Seneca Falls Women's Suffrage Convention in 1848, just one lived to see women cast their votes. Just one. But these folks didn't let the ugliness and the obstacles deter them. They didn't just give up and retreat to the comfortable company of like-minded folks, because they understood that this is how democracy operates. It is loud and messy, and it's not particularly warm and fuzzy. And believe me, I know this from personal experience. Over the years, I've occasionally run into the noise myself, but I've come to realize that most of that clamor is really coming from just a handful of very loud folks out on the fringes. See, the truth is that the overwhelming majority of people in this country are open-minded and big-hearted. They are smart enough to see through that noise, and they are so hungry for voices that rise above it. Smart, compassionate, thoughtful voices like yours. Now, the process of democracy might not always be as fast or as smooth as we'd like, but the fact is it works. Generation after generation, this country has become more equal, more inclusive, more fair, more free. My life and so many of your lives are a testament of that truth. But that has only happened because folks like all of you left their comfort zones and made their voices heard. Just look at the story of Oberlin College. The founders of the school didn't just decide to admit women and African American students and then pat themselves on the back and say, job well done. No, even in those early days, folks here at Oberlin were attending anti-slavery meetings, shivering on rough wooden benches in unheated, unfinished buildings. They were joining the Equal Suffrage League and speaking out for women's right to vote. They were leading civil rights marches and sit-ins, organizing exchange programs with historically black colleges and universities, and so much more. Because they knew it wasn't enough to welcome women and African American students to Oberlin if they would only graduate in 4 years to be second-class citizens in their own country. They knew that our policies matter. They knew that our laws matter. And I know as President Krislov understands that electing the right folks matters. It matters a lot. Now, I don't know whether your president knows what I was going to say today, but I know that he had some kind words for you all about this issue. But it's no coincidence that we're both urging you to get involved in civic life, because we both know that you cannot fully achieve your goals of service and social justice if you turn away from politics and public policy. You see, it's wonderful to volunteer at your local homeless shelter. Please do that. But you also need to attend the city council meetings and make sure the zoning laws don't shut that shelter down. Are you thinking of teaching in an underserved school? If so, I'm glad to hear that. So many kids need you. But you also got to elect good people to your school board and state legislature because they decide whether you have the resources you need to inspire and empower your students. Are you planning to rally for marriage equality on the steps of the Supreme Court? I certainly hope so. But I also hope you will knock on doors and make some calls to elect a president who shares your values, because that president will ultimately choose the justices who decide those cases in the first place. And finally, while peaceful protests can be powerful, if we truly want to reform our criminal justice system, then we need to come together and do the hard work of changing our laws and policies to reflect our values. Now, will this be easy? No, of course not. It will be hard. It will be stressful and frustrating, and you'll probably have to make some painful compromises along the way. After all, Lucy Soane spent years speaking out for partial suffrage, for allowing women to vote only on things like school issues and local issues, because she realized that full suffrage was just too controversial. And FDR, well, after facing all kinds of opposition, he eventually agreed to a Social Security plan that covered only 60% of workers. Was he thrilled about that? Probably not. But in the end, FDR realized that 60% was a whole lot better than 0%. Now, did these compromises make these leaders sellouts, traitors to their cause? I don't think so. Instead, I think they knew that if they could just get everyone to take that first step, then folks would keep on moving in the right direction. And they also understood that often the biggest, most dramatic change happens incrementally, little by little, through compromises and adjustments over years and decades. And I know that these days that can seem counterintuitive because we live in such an instantaneous age. We want everything right away, whether it's an Uber or your favorite TV show, and we want it tailored to our exact preferences and beliefs. We fill our Twitter feed with voices that confirm rather than challenge our views. If we dislike someone's Facebook post, we just unfollow them, we unfriend them. And even here at Oberlin, most of the time you're probably surrounded by folks who share your beliefs. But out in the real world, there are plenty of people who think very differently than you do. And they hold their opinions just as passionately. So if you want to change their minds, if you want to work with them to move this country forward, you can't just shut them out. You have to persuade them, and you have to compromise with them. That is what so many of our heroes of history have done. Folks like Lucy Stone and FDR, they didn't get caught up in their egos or their ideology. They didn't say it's my way or the highway. Instead, they knew where they wanted to go, and they were strategic and pragmatic about getting there. Because in the end, they understood, as the political scientist Joseph Nye once said, that, quote, the absolutist may avoid the problem of dirty hands, but often at the cost of having no hands at all, unquote. And graduates, with a degree from this amazing school and all the status and connections that degree confers, you don't get to have no hands. No, you don't get to be precious or cautious or cynical. No, not when the earth is warming and the oceans are rising. You don't get to be cynical. Not when too many young people still languish in communities ripped apart by violence and despair. Not when women still make less than men for the same work. Not when millions of girls across the globe never set foot inside a school. No, not when many young people, just like you, the men and women we honor this Memorial Day, have sacrificed their lives for your freedom to make your voice heard. You don't get to have no hands. You see, in his speech to those Oberlin graduates 50 years ago, Dr. King urged them, as Julia said, not to sleep through the civil rights revolution that was raging across this country. And graduates, climate change, economic inequality, human rights, criminal justice, these are the revolutions of your time. And you have as much responsibility and just as much power to wake up and play your part in our great American story, because it is absolutely still possible to make a difference. The great moments of our history are not decades in our past. They're happening right now, today, in our lifetimes. Just think about the folks who are winning those battles state by state, city by city, to ensure that everyone in this country can marry the person they love. Think about how just 10 years ago, gay marriage was legal in just one state in this country, just one. And today it is legal in 37 states and Washington, D.C. Think about those elections in 2008 and 2012, when idealistic young people like all of you worked long hours for little money and less sleep, pounding the pavement for months, talking to folks about what was at stake. Think about the millions of folks who got out to vote on Election Day, waiting in the cold and rain and lines that stretched for hours, refusing to leave until they made their voices heard. And finally, think about how even with all the gridlock and polarization in Washington, we have made so much change these past 6 years. 12 million new jobs, 16 million people who finally have health insurance, historic agreements to fight climate change, epic increases in college financial aid, more progress on LGBT rights than any time in our history. And today, it is no longer remarkable to see two beautiful black girls walking their dogs on the south lawn of the White House. That's just the way things are now. See, graduates, this is what happens when you turn your attention outward and decide to brave the noise and engage yourself in the struggles of our time. And that's why in his remarks 50 years ago, Dr. King urged the class of '65 to stand up and be a concerned generation. And graduates, that call to action applies just as much to all of you today. And I want to be very clear. Every city ordinance, every ballot measure, every law on the books in this country, that is your concern. What happens at every school board meeting, every legislative session, that is your concern. Every elected official who represents you from dog catcher to President of the United States, they are your concern. So get out there and volunteer on campaigns and then hold the folks you elect accountable. Follow what's happening in your city hall, your state house in Washington, D.C. Better yet, run for office yourself. Get in there, shake things up, don't be afraid. And get out and vote in every election. Not just the big national ones that get all the attention, but every single election. Make sure the folks who represent you share your values and aspirations. See, that is how you will rise above the noise and shape the revolutions of your time. That is how you will have a meaningful journey on those clamorous highways of life. And graduates, that is how you will carry on the proud legacy of this great institution for generations to come. So again, I'm proud of you all. I am confident in your ability to do amazing things. And I'm honored to be here to share the beginning of the next phase of that journey with you. We will be there with you every step of the way. So go out there and make it happen. Thank you all. I wish you the best of luck. God bless.
Commencement is first and foremost a time to award degrees to our new graduates and to celebrate their achievements. But it is also a time to mark milestones and to honor those individuals who have made outstanding contributions to our community. I would now like to introduce Chuck Spatonik, Oberlin class of 1973 and president of the Oberlin College Alumni Association, who will present the Alumni Medal.
I think it's fair to say that there are difficult acts to follow, and then there is First Lady Michelle Obama. Clyde Owan, class of 1979, has been a longtime volunteer and advocate who since his graduation has been generous with his time, talent, heart, and resources to support the college and strengthen the connections OBs feel towards their college and each other. He has served in almost every volunteer role that the Oberlin Alumni Association has to offer. Clyde was an alumni admissions volunteer from 1979 to 2006 and has served as a mentor to students of color. He has been an associate class agent and member of the reunion gift committees and has served on various national campaign steering committees for Oberlin, including the ongoing Oberlin Illuminate campaign. Since 1988, he has been an organizer of alumni activities in the Washington, D.C. area. Under his dynamic leadership, the D.C. Club has been Oberlin's most active alumni community, with alumni engaged in a wide range of programs that reflect Oberlin's values and promote goodwill. Clyde served on the Trustee Search Committee from 1990 to 1994 and the Admissions Advisory Committee from 1994 to 96. He has also served 2 terms on the Awards Committee. He was treasurer of the Alumni Association from 1996 to 2000 and was president of the Alumni Association from 2001 to 2003. As president of the association, he guided the association into the era of electronic communications. Clyde has served as trustee of the Oberlin Chauncey organization, supporting its quest to promote international understanding through educational exchanges. He initiated a project to document and honor the experiences of Japanese American students who left World War II internment camps and were welcomed for study by Oberlin College. As alumni president, Clyde used the occasion of a special Oberlin 9/11 publication to highlight the racial hysteria of World War II and warn against a similar rush towards demonizing and scapegoating. Clyde is an avid photographer, and that's an understatement, and his photographs have been used in countless alumni publications and announcements. He also established an endowed scholarship that supports Oberlin's commitment to accessibility for students of all backgrounds. In a letter of support for Clyde's nomination, Leanne Wagner, class of '76 and a current member of Oberlin's Board of Trustees, wrote, "I am writing to offer my enthusiastic support for Clyde Owan as the next recipient of the Alumni Medal. I served on the executive board of the Alumni Association during his presidency and witnessed firsthand his sustained and unwavering support for the long-term success of Oberlin College. Clyde has been a pillar of the Washington, D.C. Alumni Club, providing leadership and support for their activities. He has also been active with Chauncey and supportive of students of Asian descent. He has a long history of financial support to the college, not least his funding of the conference room in the Alumni Center. He is welcoming to new students and supportive of recent graduates, both hallmarks of the association's efforts to make lifelong connections among Oberlin alumni. Clyde earned an AB in government from Oberlin. He also holds a Master of Science in Foreign Service degree from the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown University and an MA from the U.S. Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island. He has had a distinguished career in public service that includes national security assignments at the Department of the Navy, the Department of Defense, the Department of Homeland Security, and the National Intelligence Council. It is my privilege and honor to present the Alumni Medal to my good friend, Clyde Owan.
Our next award continues Oberlin's long tradition of recognizing community leaders for their service and achievements. I would like to ask the candidate for the award for distinguished service to the community to please present herself. Presenting the award will be James Christie, class of 1974, professor of organ and chair of the organ department.
President Krisloff, graduates of the class of 2015, and distinguished guests. I've had the privilege of knowing Helen Thompson Taylor since I was an undergraduate organ major here at Oberlin back in the 1970s. We first met when I was living in the home of her mother-in-law, Esther Bliss Taylor, at 123 Forest Street, right across the street from the president's home. My living there was a rather ironic situation, as Mrs. Taylor was the president of the local chapter of the Women's Christian Temperance Union. And I had a penchant for single malt scotch and fine Bordeaux wines. Helen quickly figured out that I was not one for temperance, and nor was she. And we got along very well from the first day we met, and that was 42 years ago just this month. Helen's love of Oberlin is exemplary and inspiring. She is presently serving her third term as president of the class of 1955. After she retired from her teaching and organist positions in the Boston area, she made the decision to return to her beloved Oberlin to live at Kendall. But the first thing Helen did when she arrived in Oberlin after 40 years of teaching on the East Coast was to start working again. She volunteered at 3 local schools as an accompanist, and she gently mentored several young music teachers along the way. After having survived a near-fatal car accident in 2012, Helen fully recovered and immediately returned to her work as a volunteer accompanist as soon as she was able. At age 82, and she doesn't look it, she continues her outstanding volunteer work in our schools and gives our Oberlin junior and senior high school students the best musical experiences possible. President Krisloff, it is my great honor to present Helen Thompson Taylor of the class of 1955 for Oberlin College's 2015 Distinguished Community Service Award.
Will the candidate for honorary degree of Doctor of Music please present himself? Presenting the award will be Peter Takash, Professor of Piano.
President Krisloff, members of the faculty, graduating students, parents and families, and distinguished guests. It is my great pleasure to speak today about our distinguished alum, Jeremy Deng, who is a candidate for the degree Doctor of Music. Jeremy, it is an honor to welcome you back to Oberlin on this very special occasion. I've recently looked at programs from your undergraduate years at Oberlin, which included an astonishing range of music from George Crumb to Hugo Wolf, by way of Bach, Beethoven, Bartok, Ives, Messiaen, and many others. I still remember your Brahms B-flat concerto, which confirmed my impression of you as a probing and powerful performer. You could have pursued a life in chemistry, but chose instead a career as a pianist, which you have accomplished on the highest possible level. But you have done it by using all of your extra musical talents to the fullest. Your New Yorker articles are probing essays on the life of a musician. Your thought-provoking blog, Think Denk, has gained you a devoted following in cyberspace. Your improbable opera, The Classical Style, has been received with both astonishment and amusement. Jeremy, you have forged a trailblazing 21st century career as a musician, pianist, writer, and public intellectual. Your many honors include a MacArthur Genius Grant, Musical America Instrumentalist of the Year, and an Avery Fisher Prize. You have inspired young musicians to the possibility of a creative life in music and have made us proud to call you a member of the Oberlin family. It is my great honor, Mr. President, to present Jeremy Deng for the degree Doctor of Music.
Jeremy Deng, celebrated, multifaceted performer and writer, in the name of your college, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Music with all the rights, privileges, and honors thereunto appertaining. Thank you, congratulations. Will the candidate for honorary degree of Doctor of Science please present himself? Presenting the award will be Yumi Ejiri, Professor of Physics and Astronomy.
President Krisloff, members of the faculty, graduating students, parents, faculty, family, and distinguished guests, it is my great pleasure to introduce Thomas Edison, an outstanding scientist whose groundbreaking experiments on the frontiers of chemistry, physics, and engineering have been widely recognized. Besides highly cited work on carbon nanotubes, Edison is best known for discovering an unexpected effect, the extraordinarily high light transmission through organized arrays of tiny holes. Ebbeson's scientific efforts have paved the way for a deeper understanding of light-matter interactions and a host of novel technologies. His life also reflects the characteristics of many OBs, past and present. After a post-high school gap year on a tanker ship, Ebbesen arrived at Oberlin excited to take courses in many different areas. He majored in biology, and then, in order to add chemistry as a second major in his final year, took a class from Richard Schoonmaker and Norman Craig, discovering his true passion for physical chemistry. Oberlin also introduced Ebbesen to conservatory student Masako Hayashi, leading to two more OBs, daughters Mika and Saya of the class of '07. Throughout his life, Ebbesen has been always curious and always eager to uncover new science, even and maybe especially if it contradicts established ideas. It is thus my honor, Mr. President, to present Thomas Ebbesen, class of '76, for the degree Doctor of Science.
Thomas Ebbesen of the Oberlin class of 1976, prominent physical chemist and research scientist, distinguished pioneer in the study of nanostructured materials. In the name of your college, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Science with all the rights, privileges, and honors thereunto appertaining. Thank you. Thank you. Will the candidate for honorary degree of Doctor of the Humanities please present himself? Presenting the award will be Yves Sandberg, Associate Professor of Politics.
President Krislov, members of the faculty, graduating students, parents and family, and distinguished guests. Professor Robert Jervis, Oberlin class of 1962, University of California, Berkeley, PhD 1968, and currently the Adelaide E. Stevenson Professor of International Politics at Columbia University, has earned entry into the highest realms of the social sciences as president of the American Association of Political Scientists, as an invited fellow of the American Association of the Advancement of Science, the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the American Academy of Political and Social Science, as a member of the American Philosophical Society, as a Guggenheim Fellow, as a winner of the Grawemeyer Award for the book with the best ideas for improving world order. Jervis also won the National Academy of Science Award for his contributions on behavioral science and preventing nuclear war, and he has won Lifetime Achievement Awards from numerous prestigious associations. It is Robert Jervis's research and writing that have established him as one of our nation's major scholars of war diplomacy and security. His research on decision-making and the perceptions and misperceptions of decision-makers on nuclear war, on intelligence failures, especially those regarding Iran and 9/11, and on many other security-related topics, led the intelligence community to seek his services as an intelligence community associate, to chair the CIA's historical review panel, and requested his service as a consultant to the Intelligence Advanced Projects Research Agency in order to improve security predictions. While his personal relations are warm, Robert Jervis is unflinching in pursuing the cold logic of any argument and determining its underlying assumptions and effects. In good Oberlin fashion, Robert Jervis is unafraid to take on the establishment, including the intelligence community, but he has done so in such a manner that he has been brought inside the tent to offer his critiques. It is Robert Jervis's life work that has contributed to making all of us here, as well as people across the globe, a bit safer in what we know to be a dangerous world. It is my honor, Mr. President, to present Professor Robert Jervis for the degree of Doctor of Humanities.
Robert Jervis of the Oberlin class of 1962, renowned author, distinguished researcher and thinker, and influential educator on foreign affairs and national security. In the name of your college, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Humanities with all the rights, privileges, and honors appertaining. Congratulations. Will the candidate for honorary degree of Doctor of Letters please present himself? Presenting the award will be Alan Hausman of the Oberlin class of 1965 and Oberlin College Board of Trustees member.
Thank you. Graduating seniors, parents and friends, alumni, the class of 1965, faculty and staff, members of the Board of Trustees, President Krislov. Our next honoree is Robert Kuttner, one of America's leading public intellectuals. He is co-founder and co-editor of the American Prospect magazine, which is a publication that occupies a unique, vital, and highly prized place in our political life. He is also a professor of social policy at Brandeis University's Heller School, and he writes columns for the Huffington Post, the Boston Globe, and the New York Times International Edition. His other positions have included national staff writer and columnist for the Washington Post, chief investigator of the U.S. Senate Banking Committee, executive director of President Carter's National Commission on Neighborhoods, and economics editor of the New Republic. He was a founder of the Economic Policy Institute and serves on its board and executive committee. Bob graduated from Oberlin in 1965 with highest honors in government. He also attended the London School of Economics and the University of California at Berkeley, where he received a master's in political science with distinction. Bob is the author of 10 books, most recently Debtor's Prison, The Politics of Austerity versus Possibility. Bob's magazine writing has appeared in numerous publications, including the New England Journal of Medicine, the New York Times Magazine, the New Yorker, Harper's, Atlantic, Foreign Affairs, and the Harvard Business Review. Bob is also the winner of numerous journalism awards, and he has been a fellow, a Guggenheim Fellow, a Woodrow Wilson Visiting Fellow, a Demos Fellow, the German Marshall Fund Fellow, and a John F. Kennedy Fellow. These are his accomplishments, but he has given back to Oberlin constantly. He has spoken on campus numerous times. He has written for the Alumni magazine. He has spearheaded several conferences on political activism at Oberlin and was a convocation speaker at Oberlin in 2009 about President Obama as a transformative president. Bob's life truly exemplifies the values of Oberlin College that the First Lady talked about: civic engagement, social justice, scholarship, and activism. It is my great honor to present my close friend, Robert Kuttner, for the degree of Doctors of Letters.
Robert Kuttner of the Oberlin class of 1965, best-selling and critically acclaimed writer, public intellectual. In the name of your college, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Letters with all the rights, privileges, and honors thereunto appertaining. Will the candidate for honorary degree of Doctor of Music please present herself? Presenting the award will be Rafael Jimenez, Associate Professor of Conducting.
President Krislov, members of the faculty, graduating students, parents and family, and distinguished guests. It is my great privilege to present to you Ms. Alison Borgemer, Oberlin class of 1980, for the 2015 Doctor of Music degree. Ms. Borgemer is President and Chief Executive Officer of the Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra Association, a position she has held since 2010. Known as a strategic and collaborative leader with a global vision. She is driven by her deep passion for the transformative power of orchestral music and the role of an orchestra in its community. She has guided the Philadelphia Orchestra through a radically changing cultural environment and financial landscape while maintaining the artistic excellence of this world-renowned ensemble and its core principles. An innovative and dynamic leader in the classical music field, she has brought innovative thinking to the orchestra, spearheading several important strategic initiatives. Previously, Ms. Volgamore served as president and CEO of the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra for more than 15 years, where she established a leadership model that sparked collaborations with today's leading composers, orchestras, artists, and recording companies. Indeed, she transformed the Atlanta Symphony during her tenure, doubling the endowment, tripling its budget, expanding audiences, and significantly increasing artistic initiatives and education programs in the community. She is an honorary trustee of Oberlin College, having served on its board for 12 years. And most recently, in 2014, she was selected one of 31 business leaders named Philadelphia Business Journal Women of Distinction. Recognizing her outstanding leadership and her remarkable contribution to the music industry, it is my honor, Mr. President, to present Ms. Alison Volgamore for the degree Doctor of Music.
Alison Volgamore, of the Oberlin class of 1980, innovative visionary and strategic leader in the arts. In the name of your college, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Music with all the rights, privileges, and honors thereunto appertaining. I don't know what that means. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Will the candidate for honorary degree of Doctor of Humanities please present herself? Presenting this award will be Pam Brooks, Jane and Eric Nord, Associate Professor of Africana Studies.
President Krislov, members of the faculty, graduating students, parents, and family, and distinguished guests, it is my special pleasure to introduce this country's foremost advocate for children, author, innovator, leader in the creation of sound, research-based public policy, and the founding director of the Children's Defense Fund, Marian Wright Edelman. In the spring of 1967, the young attorney, Marian Elizabeth Wright, later Edelman, accompanied Senator Robert F. Kennedy to the Mississippi Delta so that he could see there the faces of poverty close up. Seizing the opportune moment to act boldly on behalf of poor Black people whose own persistent voices had too often fallen on deaf ears, Edelman made an important political application of her parents' personal ethos. My belief, she says in her wonderful book, Lanterns, an homage to her invaluable mentors and the principles they practiced, that I and others can do more than complain, wring hands, or given in to despair at the wrongs rife in the world, stems from my parents' examples. Through a seamlessly enacted personal witness and professional practice, Edelman has worked tirelessly on behalf of poor families and communities to do nothing less than eradicate child poverty now. Such a stance takes audacity and respect for struggle. Her Yale Law degree notwithstanding, and the difficult cases she defended during her stint in the so-called Mississippi Goddam of 1964 to 1968, no doubt provided the kind of training struggle demands. The courage and persistence of Black Mississippians who became her movement colleagues, those such as Amzie Moore, Fannie Lou Hamer, Medgar Evers, Vernon Damer, Unita Blackwell, and May Bertha Carter, and a legion of others, she says, who put a bigger cause ahead of self, taught her what she actually needed to know. With them, she felt empowered to transcend the confines of a small, segregated world in order to discover how freedom from the many forms of social and economic violences could extend to everyone. After the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy in 1968, Edelman continued the work these two men had purposefully begun to take up. In that same tumultuous year, she founded the Washington Research Project of the Southern Center for Public Policy, which became the precursor to the Children's Defense Fund, begun in 1973. The Children's Defense Fund, with Edelman at the helm, remains committed to ensuring that all children have safe and productive lives. Edelman presciently asked in 1999, quote, "What does national security mean to millions of children who witness violence at home and in the streets every year, and to the million children who themselves are abused and neglected," unquote. In 2015, in this historical moment of epidemic murder of Black young men and women at the hands of the state's shielded police forces, her question remains particularly pressing. Mr. President, it is my distinct honor to present Ms. Marian Wright Edelman for the degree of Doctor of Humanities.
Marian, you've got some fans. Marian Wright Edelman, founder and president of the Children's Defense Fund, inspirational leader and advocate for the most vulnerable in our society. In the name of Oberlin College, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Humanities with all the rights, privileges, and honors thereunto appertaining. Thank you. It is now my great honor to ask Marian Wright Edelman to deliver your class 2015 commencement address.
Thank you. I am so honored to share this day of accomplishment, celebration, and transition at this great college with your trustees, president and administration, faculty, families, but most importantly, with what I am sure is the best graduating class in the history of Oberlin. Oberlin's great abolitionist history makes me wonder how much closer America's dream would be towards becoming America's reality today if your admissions policies for African American citizens and women had been adopted by other colleges and universities in their beginning years. What a difference principle makes, and I greatly appreciate your stance hundreds of years ago. We are living in a time of unbearable dissonance between good politics and good policy, between racial creed and racial deed, between calls for community and rampant individualism and greed, and between our capacity to prevent and alleviate poverty, human deprivation and disease, and our political and spiritual will to do so. You and I are living at an incredible moral moment and inflection point in history. We have been allowed to experience both the beginning of a new century and millennium. How will we say thanks to God for the life and earth and nations and children entrusted to our care? What legacies, principles, values, and deeds will we stand for and send to the future through our children to their children and to a spiritually confused, balkanized, and violent world desperately hungering for moral leadership, for peace, for justice, and for community? How will progress be measured in our time and over the next 100 or 1,000 years if humankind survives them? By the kilopower and number of weapons of destruction we can produce and traffic at home and abroad? Or by our willingness to shrink, indeed destroy, the prison of violence constructed in the name of peace and security? Will we be remembered by how many material things we can manufacture, advertise, sell, and consume? Or by our rediscovery of more lasting, non-material measures of success? A new Dow Jones for the purpose and quality of life in our families, neighborhoods, cities, nations, and world community? Will we be remembered by how rapidly technology and corporate merger mania and greed can render human beings and human work obsolete? Or by our search for a better balance between corporate profits and corporate caring for children, families, and the environment? Will we be remembered by how much a few at the top can get at the expense of the many at the bottom and in the middle? Or by our struggle for a concept of enough for all? Will we be remembered by the glitz, style, and venality of too much of our culture in our electronic global village? Or by the substance of our efforts to rekindle an ethic of caring and sharing and justice in a world driven far too much by money, technology, weaponry, and quest for power and fame? How is it right? How can it be right that the world's 80 wealthiest people has combined wealth equivalent to the poorest 50 nations in the world? How can it be just in the United States, where the richest 1% of Americans own more of the nation's wealth than the bottom 90%? And when the highest paid American CEO took home in 2013 more than the combined annual salaries of 6,600 child care workers? How can it be right when those who educate and care for our children, who constitute 100% of our future, are so devalued in our society? If we measure it by our chief values, money and power, when teachers are paid nearly 270 times less than a corporate CEO of one of the top 350 firms whose average compensation was $15+ million, compared to an elementary teacher's average yearly salary, a little over $56,000. A high school teacher, however intelligent, skilled, and hardworking, earned less in a year, a little more than $58,000, than the nearly $164,000 one basketball player earned in one day. And all of our kindergarten teachers combined earn less in a year than 25 hedge fund managers. What does that say about who we are as Americans? Lee Iacocca, former chairman and CEO of Chrysler Corporation, said some time ago, in a completely rational society, the best of us would be teachers, and the rest of us would have to settle for something less. I believe our values need resetting, and we need to find a new measure of success. Now, both houses of Congress didn't think we were doing enough for the wealthiest Americans, and the Republican majority voted in April to repeal the estate tax of 5,400 people in the top 0.2% at a taxpayer cost of $269 billion without a way to pay for it, while leaving in place budget cuts over $35 billion that are going to hit unless we speak up and say no. From safety net programs to keep away hunger and homelessness and provide child care assistance for parents working and Head Start that so many children desperately need at a time when we have the moral obscenity of 14.7 million poor children. Sometimes I wonder what Bible some members of Congress read. Many of us and congressional budget cutters were so worried that our military, whose budget is nearly 3 times larger than the next spender, about $610 billion a year, and that next spender is China, needed more money so that to defend us from external enemies. They gave another $38 billion in war funding that the Pentagon didn't ask for and want through an off-budget war fund requiring no budget offset. We have got to change course and hold our leaders accountable for having better values and protecting our future. I often cite Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the great German Protestant theologian who died opposing Hitler's Holocaust, who said the test of the morality of a society is how it treats its children. The United States flunks Bonhoeffer's test every hour of every day by permitting a child to drop out of school every 9 seconds, to be abused or neglected every 47 seconds, to be born into poverty every 35 seconds, to be killed or injured by guns every half hour. We have lost more than 174,400 children to gunfire in America since 1963, more than all U.S. military killed in action since World War II. Is that what we believe being an American would permit? More preschool children died from guns than law enforcement officers in the most recent data. We can do better. Why are American children 17 times more likely to die from guns than children in most other industrialized nations, high-income nations? We need to do better. After a transforming civil rights movement, sparked by the courage of ordinary people of grace who wanted their children to have a better education in life, and after sacrificial deaths by some for the right to vote and fully participate in our democracy, and 47 years after Dr. King called for a Poor People's Campaign to eliminate poverty in the richest nation on earth, and who was assassinated while siding with garbage workers in Memphis who demanded that they be seen as men and be allowed a decent wage for their dirty and indispensable work. Here we are, though, a half century after the great speech here about sleeping through a revolution. We must make sure we don't sleep through this new revolution we are facing, which is teetering on the border of a second post-Reconstruction era by people who want to take us back. Worried about changing demographics, an African-American president in the White House whom we are very proud of, money-saturated politics, still separate but unequal schools in a majority of our school districts, massive illiteracy among children of color, like a majority of all children in all colors, cannot read or compute at grade level in 4th or 8th grade. Over 70% of our Latino children cannot read or compute at grade level in 4th or 8th grade, and 80% of black children cannot read or compute at grade level in 4th or 8th grade. What is a child gonna do in this globalizing world if they can't read and write and compute? We need to redefine what is important. And we have got to stand up and fight that cradle to prison pipeline that traps 1 in 3 black boys, 1 in 6 Latino boys born in 2001, mass incarceration has become the new American apartheid, undergirded by a criminal justice system that criminalizes black men and boys for their color and criminalizes the poor for their poverty. We have got to change course. And it is morally obscene and unacceptable. It is going to be our undoing that the richest nation on earth allows almost 15 million children to go poor. And I am so sad every time I remind myself that the black child, after this transforming movement and all the sacrifices of the 60s and 70s by so many, is still the poorest child in America with 51.3% of our children. We can and must do better. It's time for another transforming movement. On his last day, Dr. King called his mother to give her his sermon title for the next Sunday sermon, and it was Why America May Go to Hell. And he said America may go to hell because we're not going to use all the rich blessings that we have to make sure that everybody has enough. In his last year, he repeatedly told the parable of the rich man Dives who ignored the poor and sick man Lazarus, and reminded us that Dives went to hell not because he was rich, but because he did not realize his wealth was his opportunity to bridge the gulf separating him from his brother, and allowed Lazarus to continue to languish without being seen, to become invisible. And he warned that this could happen to rich America if we don't use her vast resources to end poverty and to make it possible for all of God's children to have the basic necessities of life. The day after Dr. King was assassinated, and riots of heartbreak, despair, rage, and hopelessness broke out across America, I went out into the schools in Washington, D.C., and into the streets and neighborhoods to talk to children and to tell them not to loot or get arrested and ruin their futures. And a little boy, a young black boy, about 12, looked me squarely in the eye and said, "Lady, what future? I ain't got no future. I ain't got nothing to lose. And I've spent the last 47 years and will spend the rest of my life trying to prove that boy's truth wrong in our money-rich, militarily powerful, but spiritually anemic, race, gender, wealth, and income stratified society still. Despite great progress, great peril remains to snuff out the hopes and dreams of millions of children like him. And I think that we are really at a very dangerous intersection, that intersection of race and poverty, where if we don't break it up, it's going to move us backwards, and we must move forward at all cost. And we must, at some point, come to grips with our extraordinarily serious birth defects. Our founders had the right dream, but they tarnished it with Native American genocide, with slavery, with the exclusion of all women and non-propertied men of all colors from our electoral process. And we keep having these flare-ups from these birth defects every half century or so. And it's time for us to confront that through a thoughtful truth and reconciliation process. That we can really, you can't cure what you can't identify and honestly say, diagnose. And so I think we really do need a new truth and reconciliation process. And we need to then learn from that and not repeat the mistakes of the past. Dr. King believed that our only hope lies in our ability to recapture the revolutionary spirit of America and to go out into a sometimes hostile world declaring eternal hostility to poverty, racism, and militarism. He was very depressed in the last year or two of his life, and he feared that we were integrating into a burning house, and riddled by excessive materialism and militarism and greed. And when people heard him, they were quite shocked. He said he would do it all over again. But when we said, what should we do about that? He says, we've all got to become firemen and sound the alarm of danger and fight back with all of our might. I first heard him, and he keeps me going many days. When I was in Spelman College's compulsory chapel, for which I'm grateful in retrospect. I wasn't so much at the time. But the first time I heard him, I was a senior at Spelman in the middle of the sit-in movement. And he came and he told us about the importance of moving forward and never moving backwards. He said, if you can't fly, drive. If you can't drive, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But keep moving forward. And I want us to remember that we must let no one move this country backwards again to the old habits of slavery and poverty and inequality under another name. He also said another thing in that same speech, and I remembered. He says, don't be afraid to step out in faith. Take the first step, even if you can't see the whole stairway. Leave the stairway to God. And we must not want to have that plan before us all the time. We should have the right principle and the right determination to be inclusive for all and to make sure that those left behind get to be a part of our communities and our families. But step out in faith and trust God to do the rest, and look at the miracles that have been wrought from ordinary people of grace with no resources who wanted their children to have better lives. And they, with nothing, transformed the nation's landscape. Let me just end with a couple of other things as I try to think about it. We have got to become, well, we have a wonderful opportunity, let's just put it this way, to be a beacon of hope and justice for a world that is hungering for leadership, who is hungering for vision. We're living in a world that is majority non-white and poor. We are in a nation now where we are becoming majority non-white and still too poor based on our resources. But what an opportunity we have to show what democratic capitalism can be, and to be a beacon of hope for a world so desperately in need of hope. And I love something I read from Archbishop Tutu, who talked about God's dream, which is Martin Luther King's dream, which is America's dream, and I hope will be our dream. And he said that God says, Tutu says, I have a dream. I have a dream that all of my children will discover that they belong to one family, my family, the human family. A family in which there are no outsiders. All are held in the embrace of the one whose love will never let us go. The one who says that each one of us is of incredible worth, that each one of us is precious to God, because each of us has their name written on the palms of God's hands. And God says there are no outsiders. Black, white, red, yellow, short, tall, young, old, rich, poor, gay, lesbian, straight, everyone. All belong. And God says, I have only you to help me realize my dream. Help me. I want to leave you with one of my favorite role models. I wear Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth around my neck every day, so when I think I'm having a bad day, I think about their days, and I get up and I try again. But Sojourner Truth could not stand second-class treatment of women, and she could not stand slavery, and she never lost an opportunity to speak up against it. And one day, my favorite Sojournerism occurred when she was speaking out against slavery, and she got heckled by an old white man in the audience who said, old slave woman, I don't care any more about your anti-slavery talk than for an old flea bite. And she snapped back at him and said, that's all right, the Lord willing, I'm going to keep you scratching. We all want to make big differences, and we need to make big and transforming differences. If we're going to break the gridlock of those who want to take us back and move America towards being America. But enough fleas for justice can make the very biggest dog uncomfortable. And if there are a number of us who are fleas with our votes and fleas with our voices and fleas in running for office, as the First Lady told us to do, and when you get in office, remember it's not about you, it's about something bigger than you. And we've got to have the sense of responsibility to make sure that we use our power to make life better for other people. So let's go away from this wonderful college to help start that next transforming movement, to finish Dr. King's dream of an America without poverty and without racism, at a time when those enjoined to uphold the law are violating the law. Let us make sure that America does not lose its soul. Let us make sure through our efforts that America can become America. What an enormously wonderful opportunity you have to move us forward, to build a new America where the measure of success is in our sense of justice, our sense of equity, and our sense of love for one another. Godspeed to all of you.
Class of 2015, I hope you have been as inspired as I have today by our two speakers. And in those minutes before you walk across this stage, I just want to share a couple thoughts with you, but we are getting very close. I want to first offer my congratulations to all of you in the class. Graduating from Oberlin College or conservatory or both, if you're a double degree, is a tremendous achievement. That achievement was made possible by your hard work and by the help of our tremendous faculty who are here today. They are outstanding scholars who love teaching undergraduates. Our faculty have taught you how to learn and how to be your own best teachers. That approach prepares you to meet our complex challenges and to be leaders in your chosen fields. We believe that you have acquired broadly applicable intellectual and practical skills that will serve you for the rest of your lives. I know you have applauded and thanked them before, but would you please join me in thanking our faculty for all they have done for you? We have always aimed to educate the whole person to achieve excellence as an individual and as also a citizen. And you've learned to be informed, engaged citizens who make a difference in your communities and your world.